What's up, you filthy curmudgeons? Lake Chapultepec, Zaronce here. Alright, I know it's been a while, but this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. Alright, if you've been waking up in the middle of the night, covered in sweat with some sticky goo between your legs, this is what you've been dreaming of. Alright, and we're finally here. So, this is going to be part one of a series of videos relating to, from, ascertaining about, what have you in the DK world for Wrath of the Lich King going into Classic. Now, with this just being released and pre-patch shit, whatever on the horizon, most important thing to talk about right now is what you're gonna level as. So, all right, so that's what this video is gonna pertain to. We're gonna talk about the leveling spec that you're gonna want to play for a DK, and how we're gonna go about that. So, long story short, you're gonna pick up Blood. All right. Now, this is one of my favorite specs of all time. Blood DPS exists for one expansion. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. I love it. All right. So the important thing to understand about DK is that every spec's gonna have a little bit of a different feel to it. It's kind of a spectrum of pure melee to melee caster. So on one end you have Unholy, which is super melee caster, and then on the other end of the spectrum you have Blood, which is pretty much your warrior. All right. And so when you're thinking about your damage profile and things like that, you got to think of yourself as a warrior. You're much more warrior than anything else. Your damage is physical. You're not doing as much disease damage. You're not doing as much magic damage as the other specs. Damage is mostly physical, so keep that in mind. That's going to come and play later on. Now, when you're looking at Blood, dude, it just feels so good to be here. It feels so good to be in Wrath on a DK. Blood DPS, you love to see it. Alright, so really all that matters when it comes down to leveling is the spec that you're going to rock. Because Blood DK is really fucking strong for leveling, man. It's really good. You get so much passive self-healing that you can pretty much just go from mob to mob. You don't have any downtime. Now, this would be a good point to mention that when I'm talking about leveling, and then when I'm talking about the best spec for leveling, what I'm talking about is a solo quester, because that's what I do. I mostly just play solo. I run around that quest, and when you're really trying to maximize your performance, I feel like that's the important part. Is the times when you're alone, when you only have yourself to rely on, you don't have friends to help you out, so you need a spec that's going to pull you through. Alright, so with that being said, if you wanted to do dungeon spam, group questing, whatever, there's other specs that are going to give you more value. This one's going to be specifically for playing solo, for the solo player who mostly is questing by themselves, mob grinding, whatever. But important to point that out, because you're going to notice a lot of talents that have self-healing, and there's going to be points when it feels like overkill, and we'll get into that. But anyway, to start out, this is pretty much what your spec's going to look like. It's going to look something like this. All right, 51 in Blood, and then once you get to a certain point, you're going to put the leftover in Holy, because it's got some pretty good talents. Frost doesn't really provide much for us as Blood, because it's more magic oriented with talents like that. Dual wield we're not going to do. Runic powers down here is not as strong for Blood. These ones don't really take as much. Again, Runic power is not as strong for Blood. This one's just armor, which whatever. So Frost is a little more delayed in the benefit, more PvP with Lichborn and things like that. Mind freeze. So we're not going to get in that. So the spillover points going in Holy is going to look something like this, and we'll go through each tier by tier and just kind of talk about the value. But overall, for a solo quester, solo leveler, you're going to want to be Blood because it's so tanky. There's so much self-healing, and for the most part, there's no downtime. You can do AoE pulls, you can do, group pulls, you can do solo pulls, whatever. It's very consistent, very efficient, very good sustained damage, sustained healing. And at the end of the day, this is going to come up at different points, I'm sure, with a lot of questions about dual wield, two-hand, things like that. For leveling, you want to go two-hand. One point being because, the hit chance is better with two-hand. But the main point, for me at least, is that with two-hand, you only need to replace it once, right? You get a nice weapon upgrade, boom, there's your weapon upgrade. You don't always have to go back and rune forge it and things like that. I don't know if this is beta only, but Deathgate only ports you to Atris right now. It doesn't port you back, so you can't just go there, rune forge it, and then go right back to where you were. So two-hand is just going to be more consistent. You're going to get more consistent upgrades. It's the way you're going to want to go for leveling, which is just another point in Blood's favor. But anyway, let's get into the spec, shall we? Now that we're here, let's get over there. So there's going to be a couple filler points that you can kind of move around, but this is generally what I run for my leveling specs. You know, for the beginning, Subversion 3 out of 3, definitely want for the extra crit chance. These 2 points you can move over into Blood Barrier if you want, but you're already so tanky, you don't really need, you know, 2% reduced damage, whatever. I'd rather get this just to have a little extra RP. That way when I'm going into my next fight, I can open with a Death Coil or something from range. Death Coil, Icy Touch, and then Plague Strike once I get in melee. You know, just better RP generation. As I mentioned before, RP is not the best for blood, but it's not horrible. And 2% damage is like so negligible when you end every fight at max health anyway. So, Scent of Blood we're going to pass up because again, RP is just not that strong for us. I'd rather get pure damage. So you put 2 out of 2 2-weapon spec, 3 out of 5 bladed armor. You can put more points on this later on if you feel like it. If you feel like you want to get more damage out of the spec. But 3 out of 5 at least is enough for now. Next up, these are pretty much gimmies. Dark Conviction, Rune Tap. Rune Tap extremely strong, Dark Conviction extremely strong, and we need it to get to Bloody Vengeance later. Death Rune Mastery. This is going to be a contentious pick, I feel like. If you really want, you can move 3 points from Vendetta into Death Rune Mastery. The reason I pass this talent up is for a couple reasons. The main purpose of this talent is that you use use Death Strike to get Death Runes, so that you can use 4 Heart Strikes in a row with 2 Blood Runes and 2 Unholy Runes. That's a lot of setup for a leveling sequence that's going to take 12 to 15 seconds. So on top of that, the healing from Death Strike is actually good for leveling because it keeps you fresh and it keeps you going. So I don't do this because, one, it's a lot of setup. Not going to be a lot of chances for you to actually just spam Heart Strikes on your random leveling mobs. And 2, because I actually want to use Death Strike. I want the healing from Death Strike. I don't care if it's a little less inefficient damage-wise. I want the healing from it. So I pass that up. Instead, I put 3 out of 3 Imp Rune Tap, which is really good. 30-second Rune Tap for 20% of your health. Really fucking strong. And then 3 out of 3 Vendetta. Now this talent is the first one where you're going to start to see some filler points. Because I'll be honest, 3 out of 3 is insane. Right? You kill a guy, you're already probably at 90% health, and then it just heals you for 6%. You're back to full pretty much. So you will notice at certain points during leveling where you either need a little more or you don't. This is where you're going to pull talents from. You're going to pull them out of Vendetta if you want to max out Bladed Armor, or later on we'll get into Sudden Doom. But this is the first place you're going to pull points out of. You want to leave at least 1. And you can take a point out of Bloodworms too if you want, but you want to leave 2 there probably. But those are where your filler points are going to come out of, more or less. Moving forward. Now, if you keep Vendetta maxed, it's so much healing. It's absurd. It's absurd. I honestly feel like it's overkill at a lot of times. But I like to have it because I can do AoE pulls and just be good. It's pretty ridiculous, honestly. So, Veteran of Third War, really strong. Strength obviously really good, Stam obviously really good. Expertise is great for leveling because you're always in front of your enemies. Bloody Strike's really good. Heart Strike is going to be a huge chunk of your damage, so obviously really good. Bloody Vengeance is good, good damage boost. If you want to take a point out of here or 2 to put in other places for, you know, whatever you need, that's fine. But I like to have it maxed out because I think it's a really strong ability, and I think it's a really cool effect too. Now, I didn't talk about Mark of Blood. Mark of Blood is not very good. It's kind of a trap point. It's more of like a tech option, like if you're having a lot of trouble with something. But I mean, you have so much self-healing here, you really don't need that. And it's just not that strong to warrant the point. So you can feel fine skipping that. This one is more of a tanking thing. It's good, but it just doesn't have the consistency for leveling. A lot of leveling mobs are melee, beasts, things like that. So just lacks the consistency. This is decent. But it's, you know, whatever. If you want to take some points out of Bloodworms and put them in Improved Blood Presence or Vendetta, I mean, these are pretty much the 3 talents that you can kind of move points between the 3 of them to kind of get the healing profile that you like. This is the one that I like, so this is what I stick with for now. If you want to try in Blood Presence, what I would do is I would take 1 point out of each of these and I would put them there. Or you could take 2 points out of here and put them there. But Honestly, I think your biggest issue is going to be putting more damage into the spec. Not that the damage profile is bad, but a lot of it is garnered towards self-healing. And so I think if you're going to move points out of healing, you should put them in damage and not into different types of healing. With that being said, this is where you would put them, Sudden Doom. Now, this is a pretty good talent. It's a good damage boost. It's a passive damage boost. But the reason that it's not like super important is because Death Coil is just not that strong for Blood. We are, as I've mentioned, more of a warrior style spec. We're more of a physical damage spec. And so we don't really get a lot of good boost to Death Coil as Blood. So the damage is kind of negligible. With that being said, this is a good time to point out that Death Coil is not your main spender as Blood. Alright? Everyone thinks it's Death Coil. It's not. It's Rune Strike, bro. Especially as leveling, Rune Strike is your main spender as Blood. Your main RP spender as Blood. It's weapon damage. It's a lot of damage. It's good. It's just that you obviously have to be getting hit. So it's great for leveling, not so much for PvE, which is another reason Blood maybe falls behind a little bit in PvE. Endgame. Getting ahead of ourselves. But so your main spender as you're leveling is going to be Rune Strike, not Death Coil. We'll touch on that again. Alright, you pick up Vampiric Blood because it's really good. It's a great cooldown. Very short cooldown. Very strong, especially with Rune Tap. Improved Death Strike. Makes your Death Strike chunk people, which is always great because I love when Death Strike chunks people. I love chunking people, man. And it heals you for a lot too. It's great. Will of the Necropolis is strong. We just don't really have enough points for it. And while you're leveling, you're really not going to be that low very often because, again, we put all the talents in the right places, and so we're good to go. Heart Strike is huge. Big boost. Love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. Replaces Blood Strike. Get rid of Blood Strike. Take it off your bars. Wipe your ass with it. We're done with it. Alright? And then we got Might of Mograine. Just a big damage boost to the crit damage of all our, main pumpers. So, great to see. Love to see it. Blood Gorged is amazing. We're able to stay above 75% health a lot of times. And Armor Pen is like the biggest buff we can get. Again, we're like a warrior. Armor Pen is the sexiest thing we can have in the world. And you're going to be stacking it as much as you can. Every gem slot that you can is going to have Armor Pen, if possible. Dancing Rune Weapon to cap it off. This talent is really, 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 really good. I love it. I absolutely love it. If you ever hear people talk about how Blood is trash and it's not very good and Dancing Rune Weapon sucks, what you're talking to is a private server player where a lot of bugs existed circulating around Dancing Rune Weapon that made it trash. Alright? So, a side note that I'll get into in other videos, Blood is going to be a major sleeper pick moving into this expansion. Because on private servers it sucked because it had a lot of bugs circulating around Dancing Rune Weapon. With those bugs gone, ideally for the actual classic release, Blood is going to be a lot stronger than what people expect. So, that's going to be cool. Alright, Frost we're going to skip. We're not going to put any leftover points into Frost. We're going to move over here. We're going to get hit chance, which is good because we don't get spell hit. So this will help with all of our, icy touches, strangulates, things like that. Vicious Strikes you pick up just because it deals decent enough damage, so you may as well buff it. We don't really need the defensive capabilities of Anticipation, but if you want to be a max tank build, you can put 2 points there instead. Epidemic we pick up so that we can spend less runes, refreshing dots for longer fights. If you find you don't need the extra duration, you can put the points into Death Coil damage. Again, we skip Death Coil damage because it just doesn't deal that much damage for Blood. It's not a big part of our damage profile, and so it's not that important. I'd rather just have the 3% strength bonus from Ravenous Dead. I don't even care about the ghoul bonus. I just want the 3% strength here. If you really feel like that damage would be better put into Death Coil, you can do that, but honestly, probably not. And again, this is just so that we don't have to refresh our dots as much in a longer fight, especially AoE pulls. This really shines through. Yeah, again, as a weapon damage class, or spec, Necrosis is a lot stronger for Blood than it is for the other two specs. So we want to pick that up. Really a nice buff. And then Blood Cake Blade is really strong for Blood. Again, all that weapon damage stuff is really strong for Blood. I like to put the last 2 points in On a Pale Horse just for the mounted speed. Not a big deal because at this point you're going to be almost 80 anyway. Probably get started with an endgame spec. If you start doing more dungeons, you could put points in Corpse Explosion. Or at that point probably swap to Unholy or a different dungeon spec. Glyphs are in my bags. So, the number one glyphs that you're going to want. Alright, you definitely want Glyph of Death Strike. Is really strong. And Glyph of Dancing Rune Weapon. Those are going to be your two major glyphs. Your two go-to major glyphs. Death Strike adds a lot of damage to your Death Strike, makes it really good. Gives you use for stacking up all your runic power, because you're going to have a lot more runic power than you know what to do with a lot of times, unless you get good rune strike procs. Dancing rune weapon is what, 50%, almost 40%, 35, 40% duration increase to your strongest cooldown, makes it really, really good. It was already really good. The glyph makes it even better. For that third slot, it's really going to depend. So you have a couple options here that you can run. You can get a minor increase to your death coil damage, which is what I'm probably going to do while I'm leveling. I'm probably going to, once I unlock that third slot, I'll probably hit up Dark Death and get 15% death coil damage just for that minor boost. The other option you can do if you're doing a lot more AoE pulls or dungeon runs is Glyph of Disease, which is going to refresh your disease durations when you use Pestilence. It refreshes them on the main target when you use Pestilence. Now, I don't know if this is a bug that's working right now, but if I have 5 targets, one of them has diseases and they only have half duration, and I use Pestilence, when that disease spreads to the other guys, it exists on the other guys at full duration. It's only the main guy who has half duration. So then I just tab target and I spread the other guy's disease. Now they all have full duration. So I mean, there's workarounds for this. I think it's more niche for leveling, and so I'd kind of rather go Dark Death, because I think leveling all comes down to consistency and sustainability. And so that's why I go that option. But you can go this as well if you do a lot more AoE pulls. Horn of Winter for your minor, that's going to be your most important one. Just a quality of life. It makes Horn of Winter 50% longer, so you don't have to cast it as much. You don't have to maintain it as much. So that's really nice. Pestilence is your #1 damage increase. It's the only damage increase for a minor glyph. So you always want to run this. 5 yard longer range. Massive. Absolutely massive. Makes it more of a mid-range spell than a melee range spell, which is great. It's such a quality of life increase for multi-dotting. It's so great. For the last slot, if you're able to keep a lot of corpse dust on you, then I'd go for blood tap, just to not hurt yourself when you're using blood tap. But again, we have so much self-healing, it doesn't really matter that much, so I'm probably going to go with Raised Dead while I'm leveling, just so I don't have to worry about keeping corpse dust on me, keep taking that bag slot up, everything like that. So I'll probably just go with Raised Dead. Alright, so we've gone through talents, we've gone through glyphs. Gearing, we're just going to touch on really quick. Pretty much your best thing for blood is Armor Pen by a mile. Armor Pen is better than anything. Armor Pen is better than Strength. Armor Pen is your best. Alright, so if you ever have the opportunity to get gems, well, I mean you will, but I mean meta gems. What you're going to do for your meta gem is you're only going to socket yellow and blue to get your meta gem requirement. Once you have your meta gem requirement, fuck all the rest. It's all red. It's all Armor Pen, right? So for the other ones, you want to get Strength, you want to get Crit, whatever. So you put 1 yellow in, you put 1 blue in, and everything else is just Armor Pen. It's all just Armor Pen. All Armor Pen. Because it's just, you're a warrior. Armor Pen is the best. Alright, so that's more or less what your stat priority is going to look like at a glance. Because Crit's so good, Agility is pretty good too. Now your rotation for leveling is going to look something like this. So, as you're starting, if you have runic power left over from your last fight, you can throw out a death coil as you're running up to your enemy. Otherwise, you're just gonna, from range, you're gonna hit him with the icy touch, hit him with that. Right? You want to get 1 rune of each type on cooldown right away, because you can only recharge 1 rune of each type at a time, but you can get 1 of each type at a time. So you want to make sure you have 1 of each type of rune recharging, right? So you hit him with the icy touch from range, and then as you get close, you hit him with the plague strike, heart strike, and then you can either do heart strike, death strike, or death strike, heart strike. Burn some runic power. Ideally here you would have a rune strike to burn, and then you just kind of rinse and repeat until they're dead. And it's really that simple. You hit him with the icy touch as you run up to him, plague strike, heart strike, and then either death strike, heart strike, or whatever. Right, you go up to the next guy, right? So I'm going into the next fight, I have runic power left over, I hit him with the death coil, then the heart strike, and then the frost reaver. It's pretty basic, man. It's really basic. Keep your diseases up. Use heart strike, use death coil. Spend runic power on rune strike when you can, and then just use death coil to prevent yourself from maxing out on rune power. Really nothing too super fancy going on there. So that's my blood spec leveling guide. Kind of, down and dirty, greasy, quick and easy. I like to think. I say that, but I'm gonna look at the video. It's gonna end up being 36 minutes. So I hope you guys got something out of that. Keep your eyes peeled for more DK videos. Now that I got Wrath Beta access, I'm going to do my best to record as many as I can. I got a lot of backed up talent specs and things like that to talk about. So, you know, I've kind of been looking into this for a while, and I'm really excited that Wrath's finally coming. So, hope you got something out of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you around. If you liked the video, hit me with that subscribe, and hit me with it right across the face, because I love to see that shit. All right, have a good day.